This show is fantastic. I've met a lot of old friends, and I've got a lot of new friends that I've been introduced to here. The displays are just outstanding. I love the, I call it the pavilion, where we have all the old, I shouldn't say old trains, but there's just some masterpieces over there. And I just haven't had the time to see it all. So I hope it's video recorded so I can, at my leisure, with, of course, a bottle of Jack, enjoy that display.
That's called the parlor car event. It's coming tonight.
All right. And Jack Daniels, is he coming?
I'm sure somebody will bring him. Anyways, with the original box, yeah, collector's items.
By the barrel.
So to the people that are viewing in and couldn't be here for whatever, we just want to say see you next year, because it's a great show, and we know it's going to be even more supported next year when people see a little bit of what they
I'm
miss.
glad to hear it's going to be next year, because I've had a lot of people that have called me and want to know about the show, and I've sent out some photos that I took, and they're saying, geez, I wish I'd come. So thank you all for attending this show. I really appreciate seeing you and meeting you, and we're having fun.
And Fred's been instrumental in helping us promote the show, so we want to thank him as well, and advising us, and you've given us good advice because it turned out good.
See, Tommy, I can do that.
So listen, we want to take a little bit, and Fred's willing to open up and tell us a little of his story, being based in Pasadena, I guess, near Los Angeles. A lot of us are enamored with the stars that like trains, and I know you've come to view them as friends and not stars, and you share a passion for model trains with them. But tell us a little kind of how you got started with like the Disney connection a little bit. We'd love to hear about it.
Well, again, kind of like Jimmy, I've always been surrounded by trains. I can't remember the first time I walked up the depot before I even had a bike to watch the trains go through town. But I was kind of lucky in respect that I was born in 1943, and I was born in East LA, and my claim to fame is Cheech of Cheech and Chong was born the same day in the same hospital, and he was next to me. But somehow I think we got switched. But being from 43, my family moved from East LA to a little town called San Gabriel. And at that time, it was nothing but orange groves. They belonged to the Young Republicans, and we would go to a barbecue over this fellow's house. His name was Ward Kimball. I don't know if any of you know that name. But he was just Ward Kimball, Ward and Betty to me, but he had a steam engine in his backyard. And as kids, and I'm not kidding, 7 years old, he'd get us in the cab and he'd say, pull the throttle. If you could pull the throttle, you could run the engine. And then you had to push the brake. So that was my first experience with steam engines. But because of that, he took me over to someone else's house in Hollywood. Fellow by the name of Walt Disney. You ever heard of him? No, but it was just, I fell into this stuff. Now, I didn't know anything about, there was no Disneyland at the time. Walt Disney was a cartoonist. That's how I was introduced to him, as a cartoonist. But we ran around his layout at the home. And then another fellow by the name of Ollie Johnson. I'm sure some of you know about Ollie Johnson, one of the foremost cartoonists at Disney. But he had a live steam operation in his backyard, and we'd go over there. So that was kind of my introduction to these stars that I didn't know they were stars, they were just people. So from that, I got to take you a little forward to 1990. Disney developed this park in Paris, and they were going to put a steam engine around the park just like they did at Disneyland. But the Parisians wanted to be authentic Wild Wild West locomotives. And I had been working with the studio quite a bit on just in the modeling department. A lot of the modelers came into the store and stuff, so I got to know them. So when they wanted someone authentic to design their steam engine, they picked me. And boy, did I have to do a lot of homework to find out what steam engines are all about.
So if they asked you what something was, and if you knew about it, you would say,
I'll get right back to you.
Yes, and then you would figure it out, right?
Boy, and it was the day before smartphones, so I really had to go through the books. Yeah. But that was my introduction to Disney, and I'm still a consultant for WED today. I did the locomotives designs for the Tokyo Park in 2001 and Hong Kong in 2005. Shanghai, we had it all designed, and at the last minute, the Chinese government says, no steam, no railroad, no nothing. And they had to redesign the park in 90 days to get rid of all the track and everything. So we still continue at Disney. But let's get on to the stars of Hollywood.
Okay, one break though, because you talked about designing some trains and stuff. So there's been some movies that they kind of asked you about. Recently, you said The Lone Ranger.
Yeah, I worked on The Lone Ranger, and I worked on
Back to the Future
Tough Guys.
3. How about Back to the Future 3?
No, Back to the Future 3, I didn't work on that one.
Okay.
A good friend of mine, Stan Gardner, did all the
very
work on that
nice.
one. Yeah. Yeah, he was, they call him Hostler, and he was the Hostler for that part of it.
So you either did it or you know him.
Well, it's a small community.
Yeah.
But I'll take it down chronologically of how I met these people. And the first one, of course, is some tin horn singer by the name of Frank Sinatra. You know, I love that man. But this was back in 1972. Frank was always been into trains. And he decided that he wanted another layout built in his place in Palm Springs. And I got involved in that project. There was about 5 of us that worked on that layout and got to know Frank very well. I only met the man once. He was just as gracious as could be, but we always dealt with his business managers on his layout. And the only time I met him when we delivered the project, and he came over and he had tears in his eyes when he saw it. We really created exactly what he wanted, and he wanted Hoboken, New York. And we designed our Hoboken. Where is Hoboken? In New York?
New Jersey.
Okay, New Jersey, I get it. But we did Hoboken, and it was exactly what he wanted. And that layout, when he passed, was donated to the Children's Hospital in Los Angeles by his daughter, Nancy, and I think it's still there. About 4 years ago, I did a reconditioning on it, so it's still in existence today. Another crooner that I got involved with in 1980 was a fellow by the name of Mel Torme. Mel, sweetest guy in the world, but he can't run a layout. Every Tuesday, I get a phone call from him and said, Fred, my layout doesn't run. I said, Mel, check the plugs, plug it in. The cleaning lady was there on Monday. She pulled the plug and plugged in the vacuum cleaner. No, I checked that. I said, Mel, if I come over there, it's $200, 100 one way and 100 back. Don't worry, Fred, just get over here and get my layout working. I go over there, look underneath the layout, I plug it in, I turn it on, and away we went, another $200. That would happen in a year's time, I would say probably about 30 times. Yeah, so so that was Mel Torme, a sweetheart of a man, great voice, and what can we say about him? And then I run into another singer. I don't know how I keep getting these singers, but a fellow by the name of Rod Stewart. 1981, he came in my door with his entourage. He probably had about 5 people with him. He was all decked out with a hat and covered up. And he was looking, and my guys were trying to help him. He kept ignoring them. Finally, I went up and says, you know, I know who you are, and I have all your albums. Would you kindly be nice to my people? And he looked at me and says, mate, have I been that bad? I said, yes. And we've been friends forever. He calls me up, you know, when he's on tours or something, he'll see something, he'll say, Fred, should I buy this or not? Of course, you know, I'm going to say buy.
Yes.
It's a great deal. Buy it, Rod. 1986, I met Eric Estrada. He's one of the old Chips cops. And Eric was into Lionel, and Eric was the biggest kid I ever knew. I mean, he couldn't go out of that store with, his arms are full. He'd go load after load after load. And then he'd come back for another load and said, Eric, what are you doing with all this stuff? He says, well, I'm playing with it, and then the kids like it, and I give it away. I went, what? He says, Fred, my series is doing well. They keep paying me money. I'm going to buy trains and give them away. You know, so Eric was a great guy. In 1986, man came in the store, and he was in a wheelchair, and I went, no. We're talking about the stars. Stephen Hawkins came into my store. His son was interested in trains. He'd flown over from England and gone to Caltech to do a lecture. And, of course, we had a store located in Pasadena. But what a thrill meeting that man. And the knowledge he had about railroads, I was just blown away. I mean, he not only knew the stars, but he knew the railroads. And he could just quote you all the routes that the trains took, and he knew all the streamliners. And I'm going, Stephen, how do you know so much? He says, it's the stars that guide me. You know? So it was kind of interesting. In 1997, Sotheby's auction house put on a great auction in New York City. And it was a collection of one of my customers that was going through a divorce. So the best way of getting rid of his collection, and I can say this now, it was only half his collection, yeah. But they had to auction off the collection. So he asked me, you know, how to get rid of this collection. I said the only way to do it, his collection, was go through Sotheby's. And we got a hold of Dana Hawks, who was the curator for them on collections. And she put together quite a display. I don't know if any of you did go to that auction. I know a couple did, but if you remember the display, they had, just like you have, all the trains behind glass, well lit. It was just an amazing display. One afternoon in the, I forget they call the display hall, they have a name for the
gallery.
The gallery, yeah. This couple came up to me and said, do you know much about this stuff? I said, I know a little bit about it. And he said, well, will you explain it all to me? And I said, I'd be happy to. You know, it was Steven Spielberg and Kate Capshaw. And so we talked for 3 hours, and finally, he couldn't absorb enough of the information. He says, I'm taking you to dinner. I said, fine, let's go to dinner. So that's been a lasting friendship right there with them. Steven still loves trains. He's not a collector of trains, but he still has the parts that he bought from the auction, and he treasures them even to this day. I also met another gentleman. I don't know how Mickey keeps coming into this, but Michael Eisner. I met him at that auction. And Michael was kind of funny because he had a business partner by the name of Michael Ovitz. And they went head to head in the auction. I had 2 phones in my ear, one from Michael Ovitz and one from Michael Eisner, and I couldn't keep them straight. How much is he bidding? He's doing this. Well, bid him up, bid him up, bid him up. And I didn't know which Michael I'm bidding up, so I bid up everything. So they both learned their lesson. Quit calling him Michael. I'm Mike, he's Michael. I couldn't keep him straight, so away we went. So that was quite a neat auction. I gave Dan a book from the auction, the collection book.
Rich Knopf.
Rich Knopf's collection that we'll put in his great paper memorabilia back there. And if you guys haven't gone back to see that wall of paper, it's phenomenal. I mean, to me, I'm just going down history lane like John Glab. You know, there's so much history of how we've come to the stage we're at today. And I was lucky enough and old enough that I saw it just about from the beginning. So it's been quite an adventure. Getting back to Rod Stewart, Rod has had a few marriages, and I can't remember which one divorced him because of his trains, but the current wife he's with right now, in between that, Rod decided no more women in his life, I'm going to build a layout. So the problem is you have to go through the bedroom to get to Rod's layout on the second floor. So there's the Beverly Hills Model Railroad Club. There's only 4 members. It's Rod Stewart. Oh, come on, another singer. Phil Collins, myself, and Nick, my partner. And we work in that layout in the Beverly Hills Model Railroad Club. Very exclusive club because no one gets in there. They don't even let Model Railroader in there. So, but one of the best ones that I did, a Hollywood star by the name of Heidi Klum. Do any of you guys know her? That was a tough duty to do. It really was. We designed a layout for her children, and it was a Lionel layout, and it had to be finished. I mean, we spent $4,000 just on the cabinetry of this layout. We went and delivered the layout, and of course, all the time I have to go over there, and it's Hollywood, so she's always by the pool side. I never listened to a word she said. But we went to deliver the layout, and we had it covered up. So she and Seal came in to look at it, and we unveiled it, and she goes, oh, I don't like that. I went, oh no, change order.
Yeah.
I said, okay, Heidi, what is it you don't like about this? I want this, I want that, I want this change, I want this over there, I want that. Anything you want, we're happy to do it for you. So we did another layout for her. So it was always kind of fun working with Heidi. I always enjoyed going over to her house. Seal was a kick. He had a heavy English accent and everything. I was mate. He never knew my name. I don't think he even knew my name. I was just mate to him, and he loved playing with that layout. And then when they got a divorce, he took it with him. So that's kind of my stint with the stars. I know Danny and I have talked about this, and I'm sure he's got a couple other stories he wants me to tell, but those are the ones that I decided to tell you guys and share with you.
Thank you, Fred. So I see you miss Justin Timberlake.
Well, Justin Timberlake. Now that's another story. This is in 2002. I bought a second store from the prior owner, Allied Model Trains, and in there we had slot cars and trains. And this young guy would come in by the name of Justin. He threw down that black platinum card on the counter, and he'd buy a stack of race car sets. The slot car sets, and 2 weeks later he'd come back in and buy another stack. 2 weeks later he'd come in and buy another stack. Well, he was on a movie production shoot, and he was bored in his trailer, so he kept buying slot cars, and then of course he'd give them to the film crews when he was done playing with them. Well, he was just Justin to me. Well, one day this girl fainted in the store, and I said, "What's wrong with her?" She goes, "It's Justin, it's Justin." I said, "Yeah, it's Justin. He buys trains. I mean, slot cars." And but it's Justin Timberlake. I said, "Who in the hell is Justin Timberlake? What does he do?" Who are these people? They're just like you and me. They really are. And that's what I really enjoy my relationship with them, is because they're real people, and they're a lot of fun. When you get over who they really are, they're great people.
And especially when it's about a hobby, right? Because that's one of the neat things about the hobby is it just kind of equals out. We share an interest.
Well, we've talked about passion.
Right.
And they have the same kind of passion we have. But when it comes to model trains or slot cars or whatever, they really know it, they study it, and they're just like you and me.
So I just wanted to ask you the one more about Michael Jackson, right? Because he was a big fan of trains. I think that's pretty well known.
Michael was a big fan of train, and he never ever said who he was when he'd called. He'd just say, "Hi, Fred, this is Michael." We knew right away who it was. And he'd say, "Can you build me another layout?" I said, "Michael, where's the layout we just built you last month?" "Oh, I gave that away." So I said, "Michael, of course, we'll build you another layout." And we would build the layout, and his property man would come over and take the layout. We never met the man, but I talked to him on the phone. And we probably built maybe 9 layouts for him. And he just kept giving away.
It's a very generous.
And they were very, very basic layouts because he wanted them the next day. Everything had to be quick and dirty. So a Lionel 36-inch radius, and away we went.
So that's nice. So the love of trains is pretty widespread, and that's the reason a big part of the reason you've had the opportunity to meet these people is they just love trains, so they came in your store.
Dan, it's the old story of being in the right place at the right time, because it can happen to anybody with people like this. They're, when they have, again, the passion for a train, they want it, and they want it now. So and we all want it now.
But like with Rod Stewart, I think one thing we've appreciated him sharing with Kalmbach, and his desire to actually build this stuff is pretty neat, right? Like he really enjoys working on it.
Well, Rod builds all the buildings on his layout. And in fact, when he's on tour, which he is right now, he rents the suite next to him, and they have it completely emptied out, and he has 2 8-foot tables installed, and then he brings his cabinets in. His tool cabinets are a work of art. But it's all his tools and all his models, and that's what he does for relaxation, and that's how he and Phil Collins, they both go on there and work on the models. And then he has them flown on his jet, and man can afford it, but on a private jet back to us, and then we just put them in the room. He installs them. So he does all the work on his layout when it comes to the structures.
Yeah, that's impressive. Well, thanks, Fred. There's some great stories. We promised them about Hollywood's love affair of trains, and we delivered. Well, you delivered.
I hope it. Well, it takes us all. It takes all of us. This is a great fraternity of people that I'm happy to be a part of it, and because of this, these stars do have a passion for the trains.
Right.
So I thank you, Dan, for the opportunity.
Thanks, Fred.